There's an unwritten rule in the village of Gumbili. A rule no one ever puts on paper, no one posts on the community board, but every single resident knows, and every single one of them obeys. Never look back when you hear something jumping behind you at night, near the banana grove. Bhaskara, 22 years old, didn't believe in rules like that. To him, it was just another old wives' tale, the kind grandparents tell to scare kids into coming home early. That night, he was going to learn, in the worst possible way, that some unwritten rules exist because someone, once, broke them and didn't come home whole. This is his story. Gumbili is a small village on the edge of a teak forest, surrounded by rice paddies that turn gold at harvest and wild banana groves that crowd the footpaths leading into the settlement. Electricity only fully reached the village about 10 years ago. Before that, the roads were lit by oil lamps and moonlight, and according to the elders, by something else too. Bhaskara worked odd jobs in the nearby town, sometimes helping out at a motorcycle repair shop, sometimes doing construction labor. Every day after work, he had to walk nearly 2 miles from the main road back to his house, cutting through a crossroad by the rice fields, over a small bamboo footbridge and, the part he avoided whenever he could, through the old banana grove that once belonged to the late Mr. Wigno, left untouched for 20 years since the owner's death. Legend has it that 40 years ago, a woman's body was found in that very grove. Her burial shroud was torn and filthy, and the ceremonial knots, the ones meant to be untied before burial, were still tightly fastened around her head and feet, as if no one had ever gotten the chance to remove them. No one knew who she was, where she came from, or why her body had been buried so carelessly out there, instead of in the village cemetery. All the villagers knew was this: ever since that day, Mr. Wigno's banana grove never quite felt the same. That night, Bhaskara was heading home later than usual. His borrowed motorbike had broken down at the shop, and he had no choice but to walk. His phone read 10:40 p.m. By the time he reached the crossroad by the rice paddies, where the shortcut through the banana grove met a longer, better-lit route that curved around it. Standing at that crossroad, under the flickering glow of the only street lamp in sight, was Old Man Marto, the oldest man in the village, who rarely left his house after sunset. "Boy," Old Man Marto called out, his voice hoarse. "Which way are you heading home tonight?" Bhaskara pointed toward the shortcut through the banana grove. "That way, old man. I'm tired. Just want to get home fast." Old Man Marto grabbed Bhaskara's arm, tight enough to startle him. "Don't, boy. Not tonight. Not that way." "Why not, old man?" "If you insist on going that way," Old Man Marto said slowly, his eyes fixed on the darkness of the grove in the distance, "and you hear something jumping behind you, do not, under any circumstances, look back. No matter what happens, keep walking. Don't run. Don't look back. Not until you're somewhere lit." Bhaskara let out a small laugh, trying to lighten the mood. "You're just trying to spook me, old man." Old Man Marto didn't smile back. His old face stayed still, and in that stillness there was something that made the hair on Bhaskara's arm stand up, even though he wouldn't admit it. "I'm just telling you," Old Man Marto said softly, releasing his grip, "so you won't regret it later." Bhaskara kept walking toward the shortcut anyway, not out of bravery, out of exhaustion, and the fact that the longer route would add another 20 minutes to legs that already ached. He switched on his phone's flashlight, aimed it forward, and started down the narrow footpath flanked on both sides by dense rows of banana trees. A slow night breeze rolled through, rustling the broad banana leaves against each other, producing a sound almost like whispering. The crickets, once loud and constant, began to fall silent, as if the entire grove was holding its breath. About 100 yards in, Bhaskara caught a smell. Mothballs, sharp, overpowering, like something pulled fresh from an old sealed closet. But underneath it, tangled with it, was something else. Something rank, something rotten, like meat left too long under the sun. Bhaskara's pace slowed. He raised his phone higher, sweeping the flashlight beam left, then right. Nothing. Just rows of banana stalks standing in the dark, swaying gently in the breeze. Just my imagination, he muttered to himself. Just my imagination. Then he heard it. Thud, thud. A low, soft sound, like heavy fabric dragging across dry earth. Bhaskara stopped walking. His heart started pounding harder. He glanced back, just a quick glance, and saw nothing but the dark path stretching behind him. Thud, thud, thud. The sound was getting closer, faster. Bhaskara quickened his pace, trying to convince himself it was just a branch scraping in the wind, or some night animal passing through. He raised the flashlight brighter, aiming it straight ahead. And that's when he saw it. Standing perfectly still behind the thick banana leaves, about 15 yards ahead, was a white figure. Motionless, as if it were waiting. Bhaskara froze in place. The flashlight beam trembled in his shaking hand, making the pale figure's shadow ripple among the leaves. The figure was wrapped in a burial shroud. Not the clean white cloth he'd seen at funerals. This shroud was dingy, filthy, stained with dark brown earth and darker patches he didn't want to think too hard about. The fabric looked damp, as if it had just been pulled straight out of the ground. And the knots, the 3 ceremonial knots that should have been untied before burial, were still there, tight, at the head, at the neck, at the feet. Exactly like the story the elders told about the body found in that grove 40 years ago. The figure wasn't moving, but Bhaskara could feel it. Even though he couldn't make out any eyes behind the folds of cloth covering its face. The figure was staring at him, directly, intently. Then, slowly, the shrouded shape began to move. Thump! The figure lunged upward once, its cloth-bound body launching off the ground and landing closer. Thump! Thump! It lunged again, and again. Each jump closed the distance between them, while Bhaskara stood frozen, his body refusing to obey the part of his brain screaming at him to run. Old man Marto's words suddenly slammed into his memory like a lightning strike. Don't look back. No matter what happens, don't look back. Bhaskara finally forced his legs to move. He spun around and ran, not looked back, just ran, as fast as his legs would carry him, tearing through the narrow footpath that suddenly felt miles long. Thump, thump, thump. The sound of the jumps chased right behind him, never slowing, never falling back, as if the thing didn't even need to run. A single leap was enough to keep the gap between them exactly the same, close enough to feel, but never quite touching. Bhaskara could hear his own breath, ragged and desperate, tangled with the roar of his heartbeat pounding in his ears. Every fiber of him wanted to turn and check how close the creature was. But he held on, gripping the last shred of sense he had left, clinging to Old Man Marto's words like the only anchor he had. Don't look back. Don't look back. Don't look back. The glow of the street lamp at the far end of the grove came into view, flickering weakly but promising safety. Bhaskara pushed his legs faster, even as his lungs burned and his feet went numb beneath him. Thump, thump, thump. The jumping sound was still there, but was it fading, or was that just wishful thinking? Bhaskara didn't dare find out. He crossed the edge of the grove, his feet hitting the more open dirt road beneath the flickering street lamp. The jumping sound behind him stopped, instantly, as if it had been cut off midair. Bhaskara didn't stop to check. He kept running, past the crossroad by the rice paddies, over the bamboo footbridge that groaned under his panicked footsteps, until finally his modest little house appeared at the end of the road, its porch light glowing dim. Bhaskara slammed into his front door, his hands shaking violently as he fumbled to fit the key into the lock. First try, failed. Second try, failed. On the third attempt, the door finally gave way, and he stumbled inside, slamming it shut behind him, locking the top and bottom bolts with hands that still refused to stop trembling. He leaned against the door, sliding down onto the floor, breath coming in ragged gasps, sweat soaking through his clothes despite the cool night air. "I made it. I made it home," he whispered to himself, over and over, as if trying to convince himself the nightmare was finally over. The house was silent, too silent. Even the crickets that usually chirp from the backyard were nowhere to be heard. Bhaskara eventually pushed himself up and walked slowly toward his bedroom, still trying to steady his own racing heartbeat. He flicked on the bedroom light, sat down on the edge of the bed, and stared at his phone, its screen still lit, the flashlight app he'd forgotten to turn off casting a pale glow. Then he heard it. Knock, knock. A slow, soft knock at the front door. Bhaskara froze at the edge of his bed. No one visits at this hour. No one walks up to his house in the dead of night, except him just minutes ago. Thud, thud. The sound of fabric dragging across the ground, right outside the front door. Bhaskara sat perfectly still on the edge of his bed, not daring to move, not daring to turn on the living room light to check, not daring to do anything but hold his breath and pray the sound would simply go away. And in that suffocating silence, one thought hit his mind like ice water. It knew. It knew exactly where he lived. That night, Bhaskara didn't sleep for a single second. He sat curled in the corner of his room, arms wrapped around his knees, eyes locked on the bolted bedroom door, listening to every creak of the old house, as if each one were a footstep or a leap drawing closer. The knocking stopped after a few minutes. The dragging sound faded too, but the silence that followed felt far more terrifying than the sounds themselves ever had. The next morning, Bhaskara told Old Man Mardo everything. The old man just nodded slowly, as if he'd already known exactly what happened the night before. "You're lucky you didn't look back, boy," he said. "But next time, you might not be so lucky." Bhaskara asked him what he meant, about the knots still bound tight on the figure's body. Old Man Mardo looked out toward the banana grove, ordinary and harmless looking now under the morning sun. "As long as those knots stay tied," he said slowly, "she can't leave. And as long as she can't leave, she'll keep searching for anyone brave enough to look back." To this day, if you walk the footpath near that old banana grove in Gumbili at night, the locals will warn you of the exact same thing Old Man Mardo once said. If you hear something jumping behind you, never look back.